Folks, good morning. Welcome to the Before Hours podcast, an internet radio phenomenon hosted by an occasional morning person. I ask the most interesting people I know about their sleep, their routine, life, love, stress, setbacks, and whatever else comes to mind. And I swear to God, folks, I will have this intro memorized soon so I don't have to read off my phone. We have an exciting guest here. He's had me on his podcast, and I have decided to return the favor, Maxim.
Amazing.
Maxim Allen, can you wave to the camera?
Hey.
I like the idea of like explaining to you how the podcast works, even though this is the studio that you own.
Talk into the microphone. Talk into the microphone.
Yeah, dude. Talking to the microphone is a great suggestion for people that are new to recording a podcast. And I have to invest in one of these fucking things. For those just listening, I don't have to hold the microphone, which is very good because I'm naturally a fidgety person. And so like I have a podcast with my friends, and you could hear me fidgeting with the microphone. They haven't figured out a way to edit out me playing with the mic. But I can't because it's big and black and I just want to grab it and thrust it. You know what I mean?
The secret is you get the Sennheiser handheld microphones because they have a really good internal shock mount.
Okay.
And it won't completely eliminate like general handheld noise, but it like hugely reduces it. Like the stage mics we use, awful. You can hear like every little bump and squeak, but you get something with a good internal shock mount. Great. And then I read this one online. Bike handlebar grip, you can wrap a microphone in that.
Okay.
And it like, because it's like foam and it has that shock absorbing. So yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. We're talking shop a little bit.
We're talking shop.
Yeah, we're having a conversation that probably should have happened off mic, but that's fine. Oh, and by the way, I introduced your name, but I didn't say what your occupation is. What is your occupation?
I own my friend's basement studio. I'm a co-owner.
And dare I say a stand-up comedian?
And a stand-up comedian, yes.
That was actually a Rorschach test because I was interested to see if you were going to say podcast, studio owner, co-owner, stand-up comedian, or engineer.
Interesting, yeah.
Because you're a man of many hats.
I think anime podcaster is the thing I have been most successful at out of everything I've ever done in my life so far. So, except for maybe like husband or something. Husband, son.
Your epitaph is just podcaster, husband, son.
In that order. Yeah, dude, I've been having like a comedy crisis the last few months. Like, I don't know. I'm having one of those. I've been reading Dune, and like the later Dune books. And there's like a lot of philosophical talk in there. And I'm about to finish Children of Dune. And one of the things it said is like, freedom is the ability to like stand out from the background, and like stand-up is so much that it's like standing out. There's thousands of stand-ups. What makes you special? Why are you good? And I'm just like, I'm having like a rough few months in comedy where I'm not clicking, like, so I'm not generating, and I'm just kind of feeling like brain fart. So I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know. You know those like down points where you're like, should I quit? And then you come back up, you're like, I'm fine.
Yeah, and I like that we're starting off this way.
Yeah.
Which is like, welcome, we're two stand-up comedians. Sometimes we think about quitting.
Yes, sometimes it's really hard.
I don't ever think about quitting, but I do sometimes have the intrusive thought of, oh no, I have writer's block now, and I will continue to have it for years. And I've never had it for years. I've had it for weeks.
Yeah.
But every time I'm like, no, but this time is different.
Yeah.
This time, this is it. This is for me. And then you go up there and you tell your old jokes, and you're like, but I hate everything that I haven't thought of in the last week. This is this weird thing when oh, by the way, for those just joining us, I'm also a stand-up comedian. I have what is it? I think it's called Theory of Mind.
Okay.
And Theory of Mind is the idea or ability rather for you to know that other people don't know the things that you know.
Okay.
And so, for example, like toddlers don't have theory of mind,
right?
So they think that everybody knows who their Aunt Becky is,
right?
They can't conceive of. So, and then some people like with autism spectrum disorders or schizophrenia or like long-term alcohol abuse, they have like diminished theory of mind too.
Interesting.
So they might think that everybody knows that the Dunkin' Donuts near their house opens at 9. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I kind of feel that way whenever I'm talking. I'm like, well, people know about my life.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'll do things like start a podcast where I don't announce that I'm a comedian at the top.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about having non-comedians on the podcast too. But I love comedians, man. It's even though I just had trouble pronouncing that word, they're my favorite people because they're weirdos.
Yeah, they're all weirdos.
And the premise of the podcast, this is where I look into the camera, folks. The premise is that I've always felt like a little bit of an outsider as a comedian because I am a morning person.
Interesting.
Are you a morning person?
Mixed.
Mixed.
I think I will say yes. In that, I think if you had to pick between morning and night person, I'm a morning person. I'm not a very early morning person, but if I can wake up at like 8 to 8:30, 9 to 11:30 are the most productive hours in existence for me.
Okay.
Like after afternoon, I can like do stuff, but diminishing returns after 5 p.m., my productivity is like rock bottom. So definitely like the earliest things I would wake up for was like skiing when I was like growing up. And that's fine because it was like, oh, we're going to get up at like 5 a.m. to go. We have to drive an hour and get there early and make sure we're beat traffic and all this. So it makes sense. But I wouldn't wake up at that time if I didn't have to.
The idea of waking up that early to do something fun is very funny to me too.
Yeah.
Because like, even as a morning person, 5 a.m. is pretty rough. 5 a.m. is like dad time.
Yeah.
Like those are when the dads wake up.
My mom wakes up at like 3:30 in the morning every day. She goes to bed at like 9:30.
Is she Jocko Willink?
I don't know who that is.
No, he's a Navy SEAL, and he's like I actually think of the type of guys that are out there, he's like one of the least cringy because he's actually like he's been a Navy SEAL.
Is he the make your bed guy?
Okay, so when I think make your bed, I think Jordan Peterson.
Oh no. It's
but there's a military guy who's also well, it's not a new concept, and it's actually like I think it's super helpful. I do make my bed in the morning.
I make my bed.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's like, okay, I've accomplished something?
I don't think that's accomplishment. I work in my bedroom. That's right. My desk is adjacent to the bed, right? I have one of my old like things that I always say to myself is the space you exist in is your mind, right? So like there's something there. That's why like cathedrals are so like majestic, right? Because it wants to put you in like a spiritual sense. I think in your home, when things are cluttered and disorganized and like there's shit everywhere, that will reflect on your mind. And so it like stresses me out when there's a lot of clutter, things are disordered. And I'm not like a neat freak, but like if I walk into the room and see the covers are all twisted up and pillows are everywhere, it stresses me out. And so like just making the bed and having it nice and flat is just like,
yeah,
it's like, it's flat, horizontal empty space is a place for your eyes to rest.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that makes 100% sense. And it's almost like if it is, like if I'm in a rush and I don't make my bed before I leave the house and then I come home to an unmade bed, it is a bit like, I'm living in utter chaos right now. You know what I mean?
Do you for your bed, do you use a sheet? So like you have fitted sheet. Do you use the top sheet and a blanket, or are you just a blanket guy? Oh,
so ladies, if you're listening, I have a top sheet.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. Well, you know what it is? I've watched a lot of comedians who are women complain about the lack of bed frames. That's like a trope at this point,
it's
right?
A trope.
Or the lack of top sheets. And so I'm like, fuck, those are the two things I need to have at bare minimum, and a full bed. Even though I have a classic New York City bedroom that might probably benefit from a twin bed in terms of its size, like do the full, and it's in like the very corner of the room. When I moved into this apartment, the bedroom of which is about the size of this stage.
Okay.
Probably from the beginning of this stage to this curtain.
So it's a small one.
It's small, and I have a full bed, and I did the thing for a little while. The bed in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I have no fucking room. So I pushed it to the edge, and I'm like, maybe by the time I'm 40.
Let me ask you this. What's your bed frame like?
Bed frame is definitely given to me by a previous Craigslist roommate. Yes. So I've still never at 32 years old haven't bought a bed. I don't know what the process is like. Yeah. And it's I've actually seen this bed frame in other people's like selfies, like dating app selfies. Okay. It's just like standard black, fits a full. The back has it's sort of like felt.
Okay.
You know, so it feels like the second cheapest option at IKEA. And you know, when you're at a point in your life where you're like, I'm not going to buy the cheapest thing, but then you see the second cheapest thing, and you're like, oh, well, that actually fits my personality.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. My New York City hack is the first month I was here, I slept on an air mattress because the roommates I met, I was subleasing one of their rooms, and then we were all going to move to a new place once that lease was up in a month. So I slept on an air mattress, moved to the new place, got a real mattress, and the bed frame I got like, it's made out of like stuff like this, right? It's like this like rectangular metal tubes, but it has 18 inches. It's like 18 inches above the ground, and there's 16 inches of clearance between the rails. So you can put a bunch of like storage tubs under the bed. That's my New York City hack, is just under bed storage will save you so much.
If you see, if you are ever going through the harrowing process of going on Craigslist to find a new place to live, everyone says high ceilings, exclamation point. And it's like, they're basically saying like, you're going to have no room unless you want to, you know, have those shelves, you know, figure out whatever that is. Dude. And as a short, handsome man myself, I don't want to have to reach for things. I don't want a step ladder to be a prominent part of my life.
I have a friend who just moved into a place. It's like his room is like a square, and it's not like super small, but it's probably like 10 by 10 square, right? But it's so tall, and it has a skylight, and I'm like,
that's cool.
There's some like creative way to figure out the best space for this room. And I'm like, it would be sick if you could like line the square walls with like shelves and stuff, and then have either like a ladder fixed on the wall, or like instead of a bed, you have a rope ladder that goes to like a big hammock or something, like a big net. And then you can actually optimize the space, because what are you going to do with 20 feet of vertical space?
Yeah.
Like we don't fly. We're not parakeets. I don't know.
I feel like the only thing that would be nice with that, other than figuring out how to do like a cool thing like that, is just to feel a little less claustrophobic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But otherwise, and I know myself, I've had people make fun of me. My living space looks a little bit like a prison.
Okay.
Like I just don't, I think I'm creative. Like I do comedy, I do podcasting. I like to rap.
Yeah.
Which people, if this is their first time listening to me, they're like, there's no way that's true.
There's no way.
But the part of my brain that doesn't work is like spatial reasoning and anything like aesthetic wise.
Yeah.
Even the way I dress is like jeans and a plain t-shirt. Like I don't have that part of my. Are you like a decorating guy?
I'm getting better at it. I think I read this great book about feng shui last year by a TikToker, Dear Modern.
If Maxim, if anyone else said that sentence to me, I would be so annoyed at them. But like you could pull it off,
dude. This TikToker, okay, you might have seen his videos. What he does is people like film their room, and they're like, well, how the fuck do I set this up? And then he has like a little paper, and he draws out the room and like arranges miniature furniture. And he wrote this book, and it was really good. And it talked about just like a lot of the feng shui stuff is like intuitive, right? So like when they talk about don't interrupt the chi flow, okay? So when you walk into a room, if there's another door, you're going to, if the room was empty, you would take a natural path to that door, right? So when you put furniture in there, don't make that path harder than it has to be. Like, keep that path clear. Keep the path clear to windows as well. When you put a chair in a room, or like, sorry, if you put a couch in a living room, you want that couch with its back against the wall where it can see all the entrances, like the command position, right?
And also, you know, in case there's intruders.
Exactly.
You could have in your periphery anybody that would, you know, attack you.
Exactly. And that's like the historic reason for it is they were like, feng shui comes from city building principles of like ancient China, basically, where they were like, you want to have a south facing entrance, which is facing the path of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And you want the back of your, like the back of your kingdom or castle or whatever to be backed up against mountains. So you cannot be attacked from the back. And then the east-west thing, I think, is just consequence of wanting to face the sun.
Okay.
But kind of the whole thing of it, yeah. And so like decorating in that regard, one of the things I really liked is the book was like, anywhere you wish there was a window, that's where you put a picture or a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look around your room and go like, oh, I got a window over here, but this wall is just like no windows, kind of weird. Just throw up a picture, you know, and it'll feel much better. And also rugs. I don't have rugs because I have cats. The rugs, though, visually break up a space in such a clean, like nice way. Do you live alone or do you have roommates?
I shouldn't say unfortunately because he's a good guy, but I would prefer to live alone.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one roommate.
One
right
isn't
now.
too bad.
But one is a step up from I once had 4 roommates. When I first moved to New York City,
Mm-hmm.
Harlem, 4 roommates, and they were all varying degrees of crazy. Imagine a group of people in which I'm the most stable person. You know, we're like, you know, if I describe my life to an average, they're like, you're crazy. You know, just the life of a comedian is like strange, but I was still, you know, not addicted to drugs or liable to like, you know, angry group texting everybody about how the bathroom isn't clean.
Dude, it is wild to me how when I was a kid, you think adults all have their shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Then like you kind of grow up and you make some hard decisions and you figure yourself out and you feel like, oh, I'm independent. I've got control of myself. I know what I want. And then you try to move anywhere and you meet people who are your age or older than you. And then you're like, where is your self-reflection? How have you not do your own dishes? I don't know. It's roommates. If there's one reason that I would say move, like I think anywhere in the US, maybe wait a while before moving in with someone you're dating. New York City, if it's going well for 6 months, just pull the trigger, baby. Yeah. No roommates. It's worth it. If you guys break up and there's a hassle, that like year you were together with no roommates is all worth it.
Yeah. I'm just imagining you because you're married, and I'm imagining part of your vows was I'm looking forward to a life together with no roommates.
Yeah. I have a joke about it. It's like the thing about like living with someone you're dating in New York City is you have problems and you get over problems that you couldn't even comprehend the difficulty, because if you were living in separate places and that problem came up, you would just be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you're in New York City and you live with that person, that problem comes up, you have 2 options. You have face the problem head on, have the tough conversations, grow together and get through it, or find strangers to live with on Craigslist. The person you live with has to be worse than literal nightmare people from horror stories to like break up with them.
And that was all part of your vows too.
That was part of the vows too. That's in there. I'm going to say that in front of my family next year.
So have you ever lived with roommates in New York?
Yeah, I had 2 roommates when I first got here, so it was 3 of us, and it was like pretty chill. We had some disagreements about like general lifestyle stuff. For like they were
in a gang.
They were in a gang, and they had their dirt bike in the living room, and they kept they kept doing
the fact that like the idea that it's a West Side Story gang is very funny to me. Like you walk into the living room, they're just snapping.
That's actually how we announce we're about to use the shower. So if you need to use the bathroom, get in there quick, as you hear the snapping emerging from the doors. And those roommates, they were good guys. It was just we had like one of the things that we disagreed about, and I'm like, no shade, okay, but like when we were connected through a mutual friend. I was moving to New York. They were already there. We had a mutual friend that I knew back in Colorado, and he was like, oh, they're looking for roommates. We talked on the phone. It was good. And one of the things I asked was like, how often do you guys have people over? Like, do you guys have people over a lot? And they're like, oh, we don't really have anybody over, but like, once in a while we'll have someone. And I'm like, okay, that's great.
I see where this is going.
The question I was asking was, do you have a crew of friends who will always be on our couch? That's the question I was asking. I should have been more clear.
Mm-hmm.
What they actually meant was, we don't want anyone that's not us here ever. So I started dating Lee, and they were like, we don't want like her around.
Oh, that's odd.
And she was like, they were like nice to her and stuff, but it was like, what is going on? It's like, we're not gonna have anybody over. Like, it doesn't make sense.
How do you date if that's the rule? Were you living with a bunch of incels? That was the real thing. Right? Like, hey man, we thought we had an agreement. No girls allowed.
A bunch of angry nerds. Don't let me hear the sounds of intimacy, or I will fly into a rage.
That is the thing about New York, is you do have to get used to hearing the sounds of intimacy and knowing that people will hear your sounds of intimacy.
Yeah, I think there's a certain Greco-Roman freedom in it.
Right? I feel like now if I hear people next to me, above me, beneath me having sex, I'm like, I'll just turn up the volume on the TV. It's fine.
Throw some headphones in. Like, because usually I would rather live next to people who have sex once a day than live next to people who are screaming at each other and fighting all the time.
Dude, one of my Craigslist roommate situation was, I'll never do this again. I had a husband and wife.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 2-bedroom apartment. But a husband and wife were my roommates.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they had one bedroom and I had the other one, but we shared a wall. And the first night we move in, I could hear them fucking. And that's fine. It was great. I jacked off to it or whatever. But
leaned up against the wall.
Can you imagine? I've heard that the joke, because like as a comic, like you must have had this before. I know I have, like the parallel thinking where you're like, oh, no one's had this thought before, and then you hear it on stage by somebody else and you're like, oh damn. And one of the first jokes that I wrote when I came to New York is every night I listen to my roommates have sex because I still have the recording.
Yeah,
and I was so proud of that joke, and then I heard like 3 different other people do it. I'm like, fuck man, I gotta let that one go.
Yep.
But the first night I heard these guys, it was a man and a woman, and they were fucking, and I'm like, whatever, I'll get used to it. And then that was the last time I heard them fuck. But every night I would hear them have what I consider to be an end of a relationship argument, but every night.
Were they full like yelling, or were they like whisper yelling at each other?
I would prefer whisper yelling because then I'm like, no one calls the police because they hear whisper yelling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it never got that bad, but there were like things thrown at some point.
Yeah, that's out of hand.
Yeah,
that's out of hand.
And I'm like, fuck, man, but the rent is so good. I was paying $900 off of 125th Street next to Harlem, in Harlem.
West or east?
West.
Okay, that's a great spot.
East Harlem is scary.
Yeah. I was gonna say 125th in Lexington is the worst train stop I've ever come off at.
I remember being excited to be walking around East Harlem because I'm like, this is where Big L is from, and I'm like, fuck, it's not gentrified yet. I got to go back to West Harlem. I actually did the walk from East Harlem to West Harlem, which is just a half hour, because like there's no like, at least that I could figure out, like a crosstown bus, and I was like, whatever, I'll just save money on an Uber or Lyft by walking the half hour. And I did it at 3:00 in the morning.
Oof.
I was coming home from a wedding. This is how poor I was. Not that I'm fucking rolling in it now, but I was like, I'm not gonna pay for a hotel for this upstate New York wedding. I'm just gonna leave after the cake, get to East Harlem at 3 a.m. and then walk 20 minutes. And dude, it was like Skid Row. It was
the longest 20 minutes of your life.
It really was. I'm like, and I will I started victim blaming myself. I was like, no one's even going to be sad when they read about this in the paper.
Dude, at that point, it's like just go past Central Park, go all the way down to Fulton Street and come back up on the other side. Yeah, dude.
But if you walk with purpose, I feel like people leave you alone.
That's the secret, is just walk with purpose. And I do something when people are visibly confused. Often it's like small families or couples or people who are clearly visiting the city, right? If they look confused, I like offer directions to them right away.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is like, one, I'm like friendly, I'm approachable. Like most people are startled for a second, but I'm like, hey, like, do you guys need help? Are you guys lost?
They probably think it's a scam, dude.
Yeah, they do, because everyone outside of New York is trained that everyone in New York is gonna come and get you, you know? But it's like, my reasoning is like, one, I like giving directions. I have a great sense of direction. Two, if I can help people on the street look less confused and I can get to them first before something else does, like, I'm just going to do it, you know? And they're startled, but I'm like, you gotta know where you're going. And don't do the thing where you open your phone and you spin around on your maps.
Oh yeah, that's peak.
Yeah.
Although if you have the complete lack of sense of direction that I do, I still do that sometimes.
What I do now is I look at the cross streets, and I this exit signs for the subway are like, oh, this street and this street southeast corner, and then I'm like, okay, so I'm in the southeast corner of this junction, and then I like, if I cross this street, I'm heading north. If I cross this street, I'm heading this way, and I like, or here's another trick: if you know which way the train is headed, if you just remember which way the train was headed when you get off. Yeah. It's like you get off, you go upstairs, you're like, oh, I'm facing the same way the train was headed, and the train was heading west. So this is west.
Dude, I'm everything you said makes complete sense. I'm so bad that the phrase "go back the way you came" is like terrifying to me. Yeah. I can't. It's I think because I have like I have what I call directional dyslexia.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, which isn't like, it's not in the DSM-5 or whatever. Yeah, but like it's one of those things like if you Google, people are like, oh no, I have it.
Yeah.
And apparently it's related to regular dyslexia.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's which I think I also have, self-diagnosed, by the way, full disclosure. But at this point, I'm 32. I figured it out, you know.
Yeah,
so
yeah. You're 23.
What am I? Yeah. Well, that took me a second. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, I don't. I never kind of know where I'm going.
You're from upstate New York?
Hudson Valley, yeah.
Okay, so I have a hot take on this type of thing as well.
Okay.
So I'm from Denver. Okay. And in Colorado, and especially western states, there's no trees. Okay. So, well, there's no trees compared to what there is out here, right? So when you're standing on a hill in Colorado, or just basically anywhere, you can always see the mountains, and the mountains are always west if you're on like the Front Range where most people live. So because you always have that reference point, you look out a window, you're like, that's west, that's north, like, you know, immediately. So a lot of our like communication about direction about there is north, south, east, west, because you know exactly which way you're facing all the time. But then you come out to the East Coast, and like I would visit South Carolina or even coming out here, and like in the East Coast, like, are driving in like in Connecticut or like Massachusetts or anything, you're driving down a highway. Where are you? You're in the woods. Okay, I drove for 40 more minutes. Where am I? I'm in the woods. Yeah. Which way am I facing? Like, you don't know which way you're facing until you see like water. And if it's not the ocean, you still don't know, you know? And like New York City is like unique because you can be like Empire State Building, World Trade Center. I can kind of triangulate and be like, oh, I'm here. But because I grew up in a place where you just know which direction you're facing, and there's people who grew up in a place that don't, I think there's something to do with that, like establishing that like neural pathway in your brain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but even what you were just describing, living out west and knowing where north, south, east, west are, still to me is like Lewis and Clark level navigation.
I'm like, I lived out west, and you're like, Georgia?
Yeah.
You're like totally wrong.
Canada? Australia? Where's just the fact that we not too long ago would have like a map and a compass. Because I'm like 32, so like I'm not quite elder millennial, I guess like mid-level. Millennial. I'm old enough that the world felt different after 9/11.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was recently, so I was at a work event recently, and we were talking about like how you can see like seeing the cockpit on an airline. Okay. And someone was talking about like, oh, it was like someone I worked with was like, oh yeah, I asked the pilot was so nice, like we hit it off, and he was like, do you want to come see the cockpit? And I was like, whoa, amazing. And I was like, you can just do that. You do that all the time. And they were like, no, you like when it's on the ground, yeah, but now when it's like flying. And I was like, what are you talking about? I used to do this when I was a kid, and they're like, that was before 9/11.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
So I went on exactly one flight. I think it was in it was early 2001. So I went on exactly one flight pre 9/11.
So you were probably like 10.
Yeah, I was 10.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to Spain.
Nice.
It was very fun with my family. So like a year after 9/11, I went to out west. Actually, I went to Yellowstone, and I, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, realized the difference, and that was a little bit freaky.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because as an adult, you could handle like, okay, life is different now, and like obviously, like Gen Z, they don't. Airport security has always been airport security.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was a little. I'm like, oh fuck, okay, I'm about to do something that's considered dangerous. Right?
Yeah,
because the whole thing about like if you're nervous to fly is, well, it's more dangerous to drive a car.
Yeah,
but I never have to go through security to get in my car.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. When I fly planes, the only thing that gets me is when it's landing. Every time a plane lands, I'm like, this is it. This is the day that those front wheels pop off and this plane goes barrel rolling down the tarmac.
Yeah.
Flaming wreckage. Nobody knows where I am. They publish a list of dead in like 3 weeks, and then everyone finds out, you know.
And it's embarrassing too, because this is completely irrational. But I always think like if I had died in a plane crash, it's like, oh, this is the rube that doesn't know how to book a plane ticket, as if I knew. Yeah, you know what I mean? I have been reading / listening to, and this is super dark and strange, but black box recordings.
Oh, wow.
Just because
okay.
I'm interested. I have morbid curiosity in general, and it's one of the few scenarios in which you could know someone's last words. In a scenario where they didn't know they were gonna die, because a lot of people's last words are like "I love you" to their family while they're laying on a hospice bed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not profound. I'm sure it's very nice for the family, but what is fascinating to me is how calm pilots are, because they're just like I mean, they're STEM guys, right? I imagine they're similar to engineers. There's just like a problem that they're trying to solve, and it's in their best interest to solve it soon. But they still have to, like, at no point are they like, oh my god, which is kind of what I would do if I was
right.
You know, it's mostly like, okay, so the second engine has broken. I remember there was one where the last word of the pilot was, all right, this is it. And I'm like, dude, shout out. Because I've never been in a near-death experience, but I imagine if I knew I was about to die, I wouldn't calmly go, all right, this is it.
Yeah. Well, I think in those situations, like, you have some semblance of control over dying or not up until the last moment, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they have to be calm. It's like, technically, when you're flying the plane, you're like a minute away from death or whatever every moment of that plane ride. It's just that you know you're controlling the situation. So if something goes wrong, you're like, I'm going to go through all of my failure checklist. Here's all the things I can do. And I think once you get to the bottom of that checklist of like 1,000 things, and it's like, well, cashing out, you know? But it's like, have you ever like skidded on like an icy highway and like while driving?
Dude, I had, this is why I'm, if I ever have kids, like, I get the anxiety of parenthood now, because when you're a parent, you knew how fucking stupid you were as a teenager.
Yeah.
And I was driving on a highway. This is in college, so I was somewhere between 18 and 22. and it had just snowed, so it wasn't snowing. It like snowed that morning, and I was on a 2-lane highway, and there was an ice strip in the middle.
Oof.
And I just didn't have the experience / common sense to know that you can't change lanes in that scenario.
Okay.
So I fucking for whatever reason, I wasn't going around someone, but I decided to go in the fast lane. And at 65 miles an hour at least, I remember doing this shit for those just listening. I jerking the wheel back and forth.
Yeah.
Just and I am so not an engineer, so that wasn't a calculated move. It was just and there was a tractor trailer behind me, so I'm like, even if I don't even have the slam on the brakes option. Yeah, and it just worked out.
Well,
you know what I mean? Yeah, and you know what's actually weird? Maybe I have a little bit of a pilot in me, because my heart started racing, of course, but I didn't really panic.
Yeah, because you still had the moments like you're like freaked out, like this is happening, and you're like, what do I need to do? I need to steer to get out of this. And until that stops working, you're gonna be fairly calm. Yeah. Which is like, I don't know. There's like that like save yourself clarity that you have. And it's like you would panic as soon as if one of your tires left the road to go into like the ditch or like off the mountain or whatever. When that first tire leaves the road, then you're like,
once I had it the car back to, in my control, this is a weird part of my brain, but it must have been like the adrenaline rush, because my first thought was, woo! Like, yeah. And I get on a very small scale, I guess that's what the Evel Knievels of the world feel / need. That's why they do that shit. Yes. Because I'm like, fucking goddamn, I'm still alive. Yep. Which is maybe how I should feel like all the time. Like life is a blessing. But like in that moment, when I saw it flash before my eyes, I had like a great day the rest of the day. I'm like, look who didn't die in a car accident.
I had one of those where it was like, I was driving a coworker to work, right? And we're coming up a highway around a turn, and it had snowed the night before like a lot, and this turn was icy. And there was a guardrail on my left that ended in probably like 100 yards, and there was a school bus on my right. And so I went around this corner and I started fishtailing, and I'm between the guardrail and the school bus. And I'm like, I cannot hit the school bus, and I'm going to try to avoid the guardrail. And it was just one of those things where it was like laser focus. I like put all of my like drifting as like a teenager around the neighborhood skills to the test. And I was like, I like fully drifted the corner, cleared the guardrail, and the school bus took off, and I managed to put my car just into a snowbank. And didn't like crash or anything. I just like drove right out of it. But I was like, that's pod racing. Yeah. This is pod racing.
You were Maxim Tokyo Drift Allen.
Yeah, dude. My coworker, she was like, damn, that was pretty cool. I was like, I didn't want to knock a bus full of children off the road.
Dude, I was in a car accident with a school bus, actually.
What?
This is accident is an overstatement.
It was intentional.
Yeah.
He was targeting the school bus.
I was like, fuck those kids, dude.
Yeah.
Behind a school bus, they're stopping every 4 seconds. I was in high school, and this is at the end of the street that I lived on, in the house that I lived in with my parents. So I, woke up in the morning, turned right, went down the street, and stopped at a stop sign is a school bus. And I'm behind the school bus, a car length behind, not right up on its bumper. And I'm from a small town of like 3,500 people. Okay. So very small, narrow streets, like maybe created when they didn't know about cars yet. I don't know.
Yeah.
So a school bus on the street is like an issue for everybody around it.
Right, because you can't even come oncoming.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a perpendicular to the road. There's another road in which there's a car that wants to make a right onto the street where the school bus is stopped.
Yeah.
And one of them has to back up.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching this and I'm like, well, that car is going to be the one that back. Like, cars yield to school buses, I assume, in this scenario too. And as I'm thinking of that, I see the bus get closer and closer to me.
And it just crunches your hood.
And I honk the horn because I didn't have time to like throw it in reverse. So I just honk the horn. And as I start to honk the horn, the exhaust is like scraping the hood of my car, and the bus like lifts up a tiny bit, and then it mercifully stops.
Jeez.
And I'm like, I just got hit by a school bus. This is weird.
Did it fuck up your car at all, or just besides the paint, or was it pretty?
Yeah, there you could see from the paint. It was a white car. And it just scraped like gray in like in almost the shape of an exhaust, like you knew what happened. And then the bumper was like a little dented.
Okay, so none of the crucial parts were damaged.
Yeah,
just
a couple $100 paid for by the Greenwood Lake School District.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out Greenwood Lake School District, although you have to do a better job hiring bus drivers.
Yeah. They had a lot of witnesses too, because 3,500 people, most of them are on that school bus watching that happen.
So it was a school bus of like little kids, and they were so excited that they got into a fender bender. And this poor woman, just like a nice kind of like older like lady, and she was just so upset that, you know, I think, who knows, I would have fired her, but
I don't know. It's like, I think in all the scenarios that could happen, no kids were hurt. You were not hurt. The engine, like, this is the secondary thing, but you could still drive your car. Like,
I did end up driving to school, and I got to tell everybody that I was late because I, quote, got hit by a bus. So that was fun. And I had this story to tell everybody. The kind of annoying administrative part of all of this is that, the cops came, of course, and they had to wait for a medical professional to come and examine all of the children, because if a child is involved in New York State, I guess if they're involved in an accident, that's like a requirement.
That makes sense.
I got to leave right away though.
Nice.
Yeah.
Like, he's good. He's good. He's solid.
The previous month or so, my mom got hit by a school bus in her car, fender bender, basically, because the streets were so narrow.
That's wild.
And the same cop answered both calls, and he saw my name, and he was like, "No fucking way! These Sheeans can't stop getting hit by school buses."
Dude, it sounds like your town people should just ride bicycles.
Yeah.
The streets aren't big enough for two cars.
Yeah.
Damn. Dude, I had a real bad car accident before I moved here. Well, a year before I moved here. I fell asleep at the wheel going like 85 on a highway. Didn't hit anybody. Totally fine. Just fucked up my car. Like, it like went into the ditch, and I hit the cable wire, and like my car stopped. I had to get out of the passenger side. But when I learned this, if you don't hurt anybody, you don't damage like any real property, and you're like not injured, don't call 911. Here's what you do. If your car is totaled, just call one of those companies that like is like, we take scrap. You just say, come get it. They'll give you $100, take your car away, and then you're not getting a ticket for reckless driving, and you're not getting your car towed to a police like lot, where then you have to pay hundreds of dollars to get the car out, only to have a scrap truck take it away anyway. But the cop gets there, and like, he's like, you okay? Like, no one else has heard all this. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, where are you going? And I was like, I'm going to work. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a security guard. And he goes, oh, do you want to be a cop one day? And I went, no.
That's hilarious.
I was like, I shouldn't have said that. I speak my mind too plainly too often, and saying that to the cop who is about to decide how much money to charge you is not a good idea.
You're like, he's like, you ever think about being a cop? And you're like, no, dude, ACAB 1318 or whatever fucking
1312.
Yeah. That's how uncool I am. I don't even know the numbers.
It's ABAC. No, ACAB. So first letter, third letter, first letter, second letter.
See, I in New York, you see ACAB like spray painted everywhere, and I actually, I think it's very lame, because it's like, you should just say what you mean. You know what I mean? I feel the same way about like the Let's Go Brandon guys.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's this cute little, what are you doing?
The Let's Go Brandon thing kills me, because it's like, it's not actually like you're not getting one up on anyone by saying it. It's just like a dumb little meme. And the conservatives love to pretend like it was like taboo to say.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you can say fuck anybody who like we have free speech. You can say the nastiest shit you want, and unless it's a threat of violence, you're good.
The Let's Go Brandon thing was funny for the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like that story. And then after a while it was like, yeah, you just seem like a rube that's like, I'm getting away with saying something naughty.
Yeah. Very very much saying fuck in the back of elementary school, like in the class, like fuck.
What was the cop's reaction when you were like, I think your job is stupid?
I think he just went back to like writing the thing. Like he wasn't, I don't know. He was friendly, but it was like we didn't. Yeah, there was nothing there. There was no like what? Yeah, which was very nice. But I still went to work afterward and worked for 12 hours, which was insane of me to do. I should have just been like, hey, I almost died. I'm going home.
Dude, I am so surprised that you have a fall asleep at the wheel story, because so do I. And what is the fucking chance of that?
Yeah, it's something I will never drive tired anymore. Like after that point, you learn. Like I was working a full-time job, and I was working my security job from college on Sundays. But it was like a chill job. It was just like I had to be there. It was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But I just watched movies and read books all day. So it was like no skin off my back for some extra money. But I had basically worked my full work week. And then on Saturday morning, I had gotten up really early to go skiing, and I had like gotten drunk at the ski resort. Yeah. We come back home. I like stayed up all day, and then stayed up probably till like 1 a.m. the night before, and then went home, and then had to be up at 6 to get to work at 7. So it was just like a compounding of like exhaustion scenarios. And then literally one exit before I crashed, I was like, I'm kind of tired. Maybe I should pull off. And then I was like, nah, I'm almost at work. It'll be okay. And then it was just like, I blinked, and then all of a sudden it was like, I'm in the gutter, you know?
Yeah. Fuck, man, that's scary.
Terrible. It was really scary.
Did you wake up before impact?
Yeah, I woke up when my tires hit the corrugation of the road, and then
when you
dirt.
Accidentally hit those, you're like, who is this for? And then when you actually make use of them, you're like, oh, this is what it's for.
When you wake up hitting that, and then my tire hit the dirt, and I had just like gone to the ditch. So I basically woke up screaming, and my wheel, because of the unevenness of the road, my wheel is like this, and I tried to hit the brakes, but the brake was doing the ABS thing. So it was like, grrr. So it felt like everything was just grinding apart, and like the front end of the engine was like crushed in. So the cabin was filling with all these like toxic fumes and stuff. God. Yeah.
That's like, we were talking about plane crashes. When the last thing like the plane says before it crashes is pull up. Like if you ever hear that means your plane is about to crash.
Whoa.
Yeah, because it goes, I guess the reason behind it is like, if you're in this much trouble, there's a chance that like whoever's in charge, like the pilot's incapacitated or whatever. Yeah. So it's like the last stitch effort. It's like, hey, if you know nothing about plane, pull that lever up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you were in that mode, like just hearing the and the smoke feeling. Dude. It was like your car saying, pull up.
Yep. And I have a joke about this because it's like kind of funny because it comes to a halt. I get out of the passenger side, and I like check, and I was like totally fine. Like best case scenario.
Did the airbag deploy?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't hit the airbag. It just kind of went.
Okay.
Because it was an older car. And this car, it didn't have it was like a 96 Subaru Outback. So it had like a cassette player, radio, whatever. So I would always drive with my Bluetooth speaker. And I was listening to Lana Del Rey. And so I wreck my car. I get out. I'm like, holy shit. And I check my whole body, and my car is like smoking. And then I just hear like, I think it was This Is What Makes Us Girls is playing from the speaker, and I'm like, oh my God. So I like literally got back into the wreckage to turn the speaker off, because I was like, I'm not gonna have anyone pull up when I'm listening to Lana Del Rey.
I gotta put something on cool for when the cop gets here.
The joke was I should put on some like Cannibal Corpse or something, like some tough guy shit. Because like if they hear like I'm listening to Lana Del Rey, they're like, get this guy a blanket. Like, let's make sure he's okay. You know, like I'm on the back of the ambulance, like,
ma'am, everything is gonna be fine.
It was dumb, but it was okay. And I missed that car a lot. But it was like a good life turning point for me. And I got a brand new car, which now I know is fiscally irresponsible. But the year and a half I drove the brand new car after that was like not having to worry about oil changes or like dumb repairs and shit was just like, and now we live without cars in New York City and it's a fucking dream. You forget just how every month some bullshit happens where you have to spend hundreds of dollars and take it to the shop. And then you're like, how do I get to work? And it's such a pain. So I'm a bike guy. I'm an anti-car guy at this point.
You're an anti-car guy for a lot of reasons, and one of them is if you fall asleep on a bike, not a big deal.
Yeah, not a big deal. Yeah. I would argue if you fall asleep on a bike going like, it's probably a bigger deal to fall asleep on a bike than it is to fall asleep on a car.
I know a few people
for personal injury.
Yeah, a few people I know have had that I fell asleep at the wheel thing. I don't know a single person that says I've fallen asleep on a bicycle.
I think it's because you're like moving, you're like actively exercising. There's a reason why when you're tired at the wheel, people roll down their windows and turn their music up and start singing.
Yeah.
Because you're literally you're literally sleeping in, you're like in a recliner, just like cozy and warm and listening to music. Like that's nap time. You know who never fell asleep at the wheel? The Flintstones. Yeah. They got their blood pumping.
When I fell asleep at the wheel, I was awake for too long. You know, same scenario basically. Completely sober.
Yeah.
But just like I just stayed up all night the night before, and then was just hanging out with friends all day. Mine's more embarrassing than yours because you were like, oh, I had to go to work. Mine was like, and then I was hanging out with friends. It was like 8 p.m. at night, so it had just gotten dark. And you're so right about the feeling cozy and warm because I was, I guess in my delirium, I actually had the thought, let me get a few moments of shut-eye. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like literally, and thank God I was on a country road going like 40.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as serious as like being on the highway, but I literally like the last few seconds before I fell asleep, I was like, I'm just gonna put my head back on this headrest and close my eyes, as you do when you're driving.
When you're driving,
yeah. And fucking, I also woke up before impact. And I hit a telephone pole again, going 40, which is like not great, but you're not gonna die. Or at least I didn't, unless this is all a dream. But I almost had time to slam on the brakes. Almost. Like I was making the transition from gas to brake when I hit the telephone pole. And I asked about the airbag. The airbag deployed on me, and that's what fucked my face up.
Oh, really?
I mean, I would have looked like this regardless, but I mean, like, I had like a big cut under my right eye and a really bloody chin. It looked like someone had just peeled the first layer of skin off my chin. Yeah, and I had a song playing. It was Green Day.
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
Oh, dude, I was definitely an American idiot that day. It was the song is Pulling Teeth, and this, I'm sure people are screaming at their phones that this is a made up story. I promise that it's not. After I had crashed and I was fine, other than like some cuts on my face. The lyric that I heard was, I'm all busted up, broken bones and nasty cuts. Accidents will happen, but this time I can't get up.
Whoa.
Yeah. I was like, after I like looked at, my biggest fear was that I had fucking killed somebody, you know?
Yeah.
So I heard that line and then I got out of the car and I looked around and I saw, it was like, okay, I just hit a telephone pole.
Yeah.
Everything besides my car is fine. And then I had thought about that's the line I just heard, and I just started laughing like a crazy person.
Yeah.
And then someone ran over and they're like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then like, he's like, I called the cops. I'm like, I don't know if that's great. You know what I mean? And because I'm not even a security guard. I didn't even have a way to relate to him. So he comes over and he's like, what happened? And the first thing out of my mouth was, I'm not drunk. I just fell asleep. Because you know, did you have the same fear that he was going to think it was a DUI situation?
No, I don't really drink very often, and like so I've never really been in a DUI type of situation where that would be a risk. But I had trouble calling my mom because I was like, I called her and I didn't think about what I was going to say, and then she answered the phone, and I'm like, and then in that moment, like if I tell her I'm in a car accident, she's going to freak out. So I was like, hey, I'm okay.
Yeah.
But
I'm okay, but is
I'm fine, but my car is not.
I when I had my thing, of course the paramedics came.
Yeah.
And I forget if it was a cop or a paramedic, but she took my phone, called my mom. I didn't even have enough time to think what I was gonna say. She was like, "This is so and so, paramedic or cop or whatever," and she was like, "I'm here with your son Robert, who's fine. Here he is." So in that like split second, she's like, "Okay, well he's alive.
Yeah,
he's about to talk to me on the phone." I had to I was a minor. So they had to call an ambulance even though I was completely fine. Not only did they have to call an ambulance, they had to put me on a stretcher.
Whoa.
And I was like, "Hey, this is not necessary." And they were like, "Well, New York law says that if you're under 17, you have to be taken in an ambulance on a stretcher to the hospital, regardless of like how you're doing." And the thing is, I was 3 hours away from being 17. It was the night before my birthday.
Oh, and that ambulance ride is not cheap.
It's
Dude. They didn't take all those kids in the school bus to the hospital.
That had happened. You know what? I was relieved when the school bus thing happened because that happened after my falling asleep at the wheel thing.
Okay.
So I was like, at least this isn't my fault. If anything, I was like, now I can say that half of the accidents I've been in are not my fault.
But I'm imagining like the school bus full of children, and the dispatcher is like, "Okay, how many kids are there?" Like, "Okay, there's 60 kids." Like, "All right, do we need 60 ambulances, or can we fit like 12 kids in 5 ambulances each?"
And then they fit a bunch of them in one, like a clown car.
Clown car.
Have you? So we were talking about roommates before, and you had the one roommate that didn't like that you had a girlfriend. Is that your craziest roommate story?
No. The craziest roommate story was what happened after I left that place.
Okay.
So we leave that place. Lee was living, my wife, my now wife.
My wife.
We had been dating for about 9 months at this point, and this is 2020. Okay, so I move out of the other roommate situation, summer 2020, and Lee lives in a 3-bedroom apartment. Okay. She lives with 2 other guys. One of the guys is the only dude on the lease, and he's like kind of a scammer. So what he did was like, the landlord didn't give a fuck, so he would like run his own short-term rental thing and charge people whatever and skim off the top so he could, it was pretty fucking blatant what he was doing. But he was like,
I'm writing this down. Like, okay.
Dude, that should have been the red flag right away. But he was like a cool enough guy, and we had gotten along for like the whole time Lee had lived there, right? Which is like 8 months at this point. And we were like, "Oh yeah, he's chill, he's great." We hung out, whatever. And then the third room opens up right as I have to leave my other place. And Lee was like, "Just come and live here." And I was like kind of apprehensive at first. I was like, "I don't know. We're moving in together. It's kind of like whatever." It was not a big deal. I move in there, and it was just like a switch flipped in the other guy where he was so cool. And then all of a sudden he was so hostile. Like, and we were together. We were so like, we were still early in our relationship. So it's not like we were still in the honeymoon phase. So we're just like hanging out, taking it easy. And it's like I was over there basically every night for lockdown anyway. Like I would work at my place, walk to her place, we'd crash, And then he starts getting like really hostile to the point where it's like he just like got up one day we're like all hanging out, and he just got up from the couch. He's like, "When are you all going to get your own place? Like, when are you going to move out?" And I was like, "I've been here like 10 days. Like, this is a wild question because like, what the fuck?" Like, he's like, I don't like people getting comfortable here, all this shit. And I'm like, "Oh, what's happening is he's like, he realizes he can't exploit us as individuals because we're a couple."
Yeah. And
he is on the lease, so he controls the space type deal. Woke up one morning to him like fucking like Lee was making breakfast and was like was ignoring him. He was talking some shit and he just started yelling at her. I'm like, he was like so mad about some bullshit. And then he was like, I came out there and he's like, you're being an asshole and stuff. And then he's like, "You need to keep her in check." And I was like, "That's not my job." And he was like, he like called me a pussy and all this stuff. And I was like, "Dude, like chill out." Like I was very calm, but we basically like, we moved out early. So we lived there 20 days. And we just moved out mid-month to another place. And it was, dude, that was wild because I've never lived in a hostile situation before. And like, what's crazy to me is like, I was an adult in that situation. I'm very like emotionally level and very grounded, and I can like deal with things. And I was so stressed out. Like if he would leave for the day, it was like, oh, like we can finally breathe, you know? And I'm like, what was hard to think about for me too is like we got through that situation fine. We had money, we had a place to go, we had each other, we worked it out, and we ended up living in our next place for 2 years, and it was wonderful. But reflecting on the fact that there are people who are children who are stuck in situations that feel like that. And I'm like, I can't even imagine what that does to your brain growing up in a place where you're scared of your parents and you have nowhere to go. And I'm like a 25-year-old adult at the time. And I'm like, well, we're going to leave because fuck you.
Yeah.
But I'm still stressed out by this, you know?
That
was bad.
That's wild. And to be honest, when you were describing like his MO at first, you know, having lived in New York so long, I'm like, it's scummy, but I respect the hustle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like the minute it's not working 100% in his favor, he gets legit rude to you to the point where he tells you to keep your bitch in line.
Yeah. Dude, it was wild. It was like, it was such a crazy flip. And like, I should have just seen the red flags right away. It's like, I know what you're up to. Like, you clearly are not working. You are paying your rent somehow. And I think you're paying your rent with other people's rent. Like, and it's like, it's scummy to be a landlord. It's even scummier to be a middleman leech between your landlord and other tenants.
Dude.
You know?
Yeah.
So fuck that. Fuck that dude. Fuck him. And like, I don't know. He was gonna go to. This is one of my reprieves, right? Like this dude was shitty. He said some fucked up stuff to my wife. All this says fucked up stuff to me. Lee overheard him on the phone with his mom came to visit, and she was like giving him groceries and stuff. And he was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about moving back home for the pandemic." And she was like, "Don't you remember? We don't get along." Like his own mother was like, "No," which. Yeah, so fuck you, dude. I hope you die alone. Well, actually, I hope you have a moment of severe reflection and clarity where you realize that your ways are damaging those around you and yourself. And I hope that version of you dies, and I hope you are born again as a person who regrets what they did.
And after all of that, we also hope you die alone.
Yeah.
Do you want to say his first and last name for the podcast?
Nah, I'm not going to be shady.
Well, Maxim, you're the bigger man, and I think this is a great place for us to end. I will share my shitty roommate stories on a future episode, folks. But you've been a great guest.
Thank you.
This is a great studio. Can
fun.
you tell the folks where they could find you on social media?
You can follow me on Instagram at asparaguts. It's like asparagus with guts at the end. There's a link in my bio to all my shows. I have Don't Quit Your Day Job, which is a podcast where I interview people about their creative passions.
Including Bobby Sheehan.
Including Bobby. And my other show, Watch from Mercury, is a anime watch-along podcast. We're finishing up Mobile Suit Gundam Witch from Mercury, and we're moving into Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, so check that out. And the studio where we record this is called My Friend's Basement Studio, of which I am the co-owner. So My Friend's Basement Studio on Instagram or myfriendsbasement.studio in your web browser. If you want some fairly priced recording, come check us out.
And I can speak from experience that they have experience in walking people through podcasting when the host has no idea what they're doing. So that's very... Folks, thanks for joining us. And remember, early to bed, early to rise makes a man wealthy, healthy, and wise. I'm just playing night owls. You know I love you. Hell yeah, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
That was awesome.